My name is Joyce, and in this video I will walk you through the presentation of my No Tools Required furniture joint system. As you may be aware, the RTA, ready to assemble furniture industry, is annually a $2 billion industry, and the infrastructure of all those designs currently go together with screws, nails, and cams. An example of such furniture is shown here, this simple cube design put out by Souder Woodworking. The directions for assembly, they take place over a total of 7 pages, as I'm showing you here. And the hardware for the assembly of this design is shown here. Again, many screws, cams, similar components. Now I will walk you through a similar cube design using my No Tools Required joint system. The first thing you'll notice if you come overhead is that we have an asymmetrical joint that slides together to create a flush right angle. Then you take another piece which is identical. All 4 sides of this cube are identical, so you don't have to worry about which one to put in first or is there a specific order. You just grab and go. And here's our 4th piece. Now you can see the cube is fairly solid but not quite there. If you look closely on this inner ledge, you'll notice that there's an 1/8 inch ledge that has been routed into the material, and there we simply drop in our backer piece, and now again the rigidity is becoming more. Finally, we set in what is known as our rotational lockdown piece. Sits in that way, rotate, and locks down. Once again, we'll go closer and notice that on this rotational lockdown, it steps down, there's a flange, and then there's the flange groove that accepts the rotational lockdown when the flange enters it. And now if we zoom out, you'll notice that this entire design is totally solid and cannot come apart unless you undo the rotational lockdown. So, let me walk you through some of the history of how this joint system came about, what's patentable, and what's profitable. If you notice here, this is your standard dovetail joint, the darling of all the dovetail furniture joints. And what we realized is that if we wanted to have a joint connection, say it looks similar here to this sliding dovetail joint, what we needed to be able to do was create it on the CNC bed without flipping over the material. And so if you imagine this piece of material on the CNC bed, this part of the joint can be cut from overhead, but this other side of the joint is on the underside of the board, which means you would have to flip the board over, realign the origin point, and start cutting again, which is not a cost-effective system. So, in trying to figure out how do we make a flush right angle joint that does not require flipping over on the CNC table, the idea of the asymmetrical joint came about. That asymmetrical joint, you just saw it on the cube that I put together, but there it is. And now, if we go back to this drawing over here, you'll see that we have a T-slot cutter and a straight slot cutter. And the answer to how do you create an asymmetrical joint when all existing joints and router bits are symmetrical, well, in fact, the problem was the solution. You see, if we go back, I will draw in here that first you come with a T-slot cutter. And cutting out of that blue piece, there's the T-slot cutter. Now what remains at that point is this amount of material here. And then you come through with the straight slot cutter and you remove that, and then once again here is that asymmetrical joint. So flush right angle, don't have to flip the board, just turn off the lights and run with the machine. Now I'll show you the extrapolation of this asymmetrical system. Once again, if you want a flush right angle, that's known as the flushy. If you want to have an overhang, you can use this configuration known as the flange. And if you wanted to have a shelf, you use this configuration known as the shelf joint. So, something else about this joint system that is perhaps more intriguing than the utility benefits of no tools required assembly is that if you recall back to 1998 when the iMac first came out, translucent plastic was all the rave. Microwaves were doing it, George Foreman makers were now translucent, handles of multiple kitchen utensils were becoming translucent. But you might recall that furniture never made that leap. And the reason RTA furniture never made that leap is that, once again, the infrastructure is screws, nails, and cams. You can't nail into plastic, and if you try to screw into plastic, there's no grain to bite the screw. So now let me show you the same opaque cube design that I put together, only this time it's going to be in a translucent material. Again, asymmetrical joint. All four sides are identical. The user does not have to think about which piece to grab and what order to grab it in. Drop in your backer piece. Set in your rotational lockdown. Rotate. And now let me bring back the opaque version, and you can see that the aesthetic value of the same design done with translucent material is quite appealing, very interesting. And remember, the RTA furniture industry is currently a $2 billion annual industry with no one tapping into the potential of a translucent marketplace. Now let me show you, put this aside. This here is an example of some mock packaging for how we consider the designs to be sold. Around all the edges you'll see what says now, how, and wow. Now is the furniture collapsed in the box, how is an exploded diagram of the furniture, and wow is the completed assembly. The brand name that we consider for this would be Nomadic Culture, and this would be geared towards your more college dorm room market. But if you recall the instructions that I showed you on the solder cube before, they were 7 pages. And what's neat about our approach is that when you open the box, right here on the inner lid is a 9 square grid with 9 pictures, no words, showing the entire assembly process. Now, you might be curious, how do we get translucent furniture to Walmart prices? And the answer is that the entire joint system that I've showed you not only can be cut on a CNC machine, but lends itself to mold injection, and that is the answer as to how you can get the prices down low enough for Walmart distribution. Close this box here. So the cube is one of the modular components of design possibility. Here are more modular components of design possibility that we have immediately designed, ready, and available. And here is some examples of how you could put those modular components together. Again, a brand name that we've considered is the Rhythm Tansu. And so if you want to custom make your own wall or space in the middle of the room, here are some examples that the Rhythm Tansu could lend itself to. Now you might be asking, what if I'm not interested in making my own custom design from 6 or 10 modular pieces of furniture? You might be asking, what if I just want to buy one piece of furniture, one standalone unit that solves all of the problems that I have? Well, next we will put together the Diamondback bookshelf. Oh, feel free to contact me with any questions.